My name is Serafina, and I am 29 years old. My husband refused all intimate contact after our wedding, claiming my body, my choice. Little did he know, I was already one step ahead, unraveling a web of deceit that would expose his true nature and shatter the illusion of our perfect life. The crisp autumn air of October was a stark contrast to the warmth that had enveloped me just weeks prior, a warmth I now realized was nothing more than a carefully constructed facade. I sat by the window of our sprawling, sterile penthouse apartment, the city lights twinkling below like a million shattered promises. My hand, still adorned with the diamond ring that had once felt like a promise of forever, now felt heavy, a beautiful, glittering lie. Trevor. The name itself was a bitter taste on my tongue. He was the man who had swept me off my feet with charming smiles, whispered sweet nothings, and a veneer of sophistication that had blinded me to the darkness lurking beneath. Our wedding, a lavish affair at the historic Blackwood estate, had been the culmination of a whirlwind romance that, in hindsight, felt less like destiny and more like a meticulously orchestrated performance. The first crack in my fairy tale began on our wedding night. I remember the anticipation, the nervous excitement as I slipped into the silk negligee I had bought specially for the occasion. Trevor, usually so affectionate, had been distant, almost evasive. He'd blamed it on exhaustion, the stress of the wedding, and I, ever the understanding bride, had accepted it. But the nights that followed were no different. His excuses grew more elaborate, his touch more fleeting, until finally he uttered the words that had sent a chill down my spine. My body, my choice, Serafina. I need time. My body, my choice. The phrase, usually a beacon of empowerment, felt like a weapon against me, a shield he wielded to keep me at arm's length. I tried to rationalize it, to understand. Perhaps he had past trauma, something he wasn't ready to share. But the emotional distance wasn't just physical. He was cold, almost clinical. His eyes, which had once held such warmth, now seemed to observe me with a detached scrutiny, like a scientist examining a specimen. Doubt, a tiny, insidious seed, began to sprout in my mind. It was irrational, I told myself. Trevor left me. He had chosen me. But the seed, once planted, began to unfurl its tendrils, weaving through my thoughts until I couldn't ignore it any longer. One Tuesday morning, Trevor left for what he claimed was an emergency business trip to Chicago. He was usually meticulous about his phone, but in his haste, he left it on the bedside table. I stared at it, a forbidden fruit, for what felt like an eternity. My internal struggle was fierce. Was I truly so suspicious that I would invade his privacy? But the gnawing feeling, the hollow ache in my chest, pushed me forward. With trembling fingers, I picked it up. His phone was locked, of course, but as I was about to put it down, a notification flashed across the screen. A text message from A. The message was innocuous enough. Don't forget the papers for the lawyer, darling, and tell Serafina I said hello. Serafina, my name. Why would A be mentioning me and papers for the lawyer? A cold dread seeped into my veins. I knew Trevor had a high-powered legal team for his various business ventures, but the way A had phrased it felt personal. My mind raced. A. Amanda. I had seen the name pop up a few times in his email correspondence before, always in relation to business, a client, or associate. But darling? The next few days were a blur of restless nights and forced smiles. I pretended everything was fine, but inside, a storm was brewing. I decided to start subtly, to look for anything out of place. I began with his study, a room he usually kept locked. He often worked late, and on those occasions, he'd leave the door ajar. Tonight was one such night. The room was meticulously organized, almost too much so. Every book perfectly aligned, every document neatly stacked. I ran my hand over the cool mahogany desk, my eyes scanning for anything amiss. And then I saw it, tucked beneath a stack of financial reports. A small leather-bound diary. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was a line I shouldn't cross. But the image of his distant eyes, the sting of his "my body, my choice," propelled me forward. I opened it. The entries weren't daily, but they were revealing. They spoke of a woman, Mandy, and a life I knew nothing about. There were references to our house, our plans, and even our anniversary. My breath hitched in my throat as I read a particularly damning entry. Mandy is worried about the settlement. Serafina's money will solve everything. Just a few more months. Settlement. Serafina's money. It hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't about love. It was about something far more sinister. He was married. He was still married. And he was using me. A wave of nausea washed over me. The beautiful wedding, the passionate declarations, the carefully constructed intimacy, it was all a lie. I felt a cold fury begin to simmer beneath the surface, replacing the hurt and confusion. I wouldn't be a victim. I would fight back. The first step was to confirm my suspicions beyond a shadow of a doubt. I remembered a name from the diary, a location, the Bluebell Cottage, Willow Creek. I secretly hired a private investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Esmeralda, with keen eyes and a reputation for discretion. I gave Trevor his photo and the address. Esmeralda's report came back within a week, delivered in a plain brown envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were photographs. Photographs of Trevor, laughing, embracing a beautiful blonde woman, Amanda. There were pictures of them entering and leaving the Bluebell Cottage, images of them grocery shopping together, even a shot of them with a small child, a little girl with Trevor's eyes. Bigamy. The word echoed in my mind a heavy, damning indictment. And the child. He had a child! My heart broke, not just for myself, but for the innocent life caught in his web of deceit. The emotional turmoil was immense, but a strange clarity settled on me. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was enraged. He had played me for a fool, but he had underestimated me. I was a successful architect, a woman who built things, and I would now meticulously dismantle his carefully constructed life of lies. I continued to play the part of the devoted, if slightly confused, wife. Trevor, oblivious to the storm brewing, continued with his charade. He'd return from his business trips with feigned enthusiasm, recounting fabricated stories of deals closed and clients wooed. I'd listen, my smile unwavering, my mind cataloging every inconsistency, every lie. I began to gather evidence. I meticulously copied every incriminating document I found in his study, every email, every financial statement that hinted at his fraudulent activities. I even managed to retrieve the text message from his phone when he left it unattended again. I compiled a detailed timeline, cross-referencing dates and incidents with Esmeralda's findings. One evening, while Trevor was out at what he called a networking event, I decided to dig deeper into the settlement he'd mentioned in his diary. I remembered a specific legal firm he occasionally used for complex financial matters, Sterling and Sterling. It was a long shot, but I hoped to find some public record, something to link Trevor and Amanda to a divorce proceeding. I logged onto a public records database, armed with both Trevor's and Amanda's full names. And there it was. A divorce filing. Trevor Caldwell versus Amanda Peterson. But the filing date was from after our wedding, and the details... They mentioned a prenuptial agreement that stated Amanda would receive a substantial sum upon divorce, but only if certain conditions were met. Conditions that seemed to be tied to another marriage. My marriage. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just bigamy, this was a sophisticated, premeditated scheme. Trevor wasn't just divorcing Amanda, he was orchestrating it to benefit financially from marrying me. My wealth, my family's legacy. It was all part of his elaborate plan. He was a predator, and I was his prey. The thought ignited a fierce protectiveness within me. I wouldn't let him get away with it. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for every woman he might have targeted or would target in the future. I met with Esmeralda again, presenting her with the new evidence. Her eyes widened as she reviewed the documents. "Serafina," she said, her voice hushed, "this goes beyond bigamy. This is grand-scale fraud. This is a criminal enterprise." She suggested we involve law enforcement, but I wasn't ready. I wanted to build an ironclad case to ensure he couldn't wriggle his way out. I wanted him to be exposed, to face the full weight of his actions. Esmeralda, with her network of contacts, managed to identify Amanda Peterson. She wasn't just a victim, she was a complicit partner. It turned out Amanda was a former actress, struggling to make ends meet, who had been lured into Trevor's scheme with promises of financial security. They had been working together for years, targeting wealthy, unsuspecting women. My blood ran cold at the thought of how many others might have fallen prey to their machinations. The thought of confronting Trevor sent shivers down my spine, but I knew it was necessary. Not a shouting match, not an emotional outburst, but a carefully planned interrogation. I needed him to reveal more, to confirm his guilt in his own words. I chose a Friday evening. Trevor had just returned from another business trip, looking tired but pleased with himself. He sat across from me at the dinner table, recounting a fabricated story about a new client. I let him talk, my gaze unwavering. "Trevor," I began, my voice calm, almost dangerously so. "We need to talk about Amanda." His fork clattered against his plate. His face, usually so composed, contorted into a mask of surprise, then irritation. "Amanda? What about her, Serafina? She's a colleague." "Is she?" I countered, my eyes boring into his. "Because according to her divorce filing, you're still very much married to her. And the settlement terms, Trevor, are quite interesting. They seem to be contingent on your recent marriage to me." The color drained from his face. He stammered, his usual smooth delivery completely gone. I I don't know what you're talking about, Serafina. This is absurd." "Is it, Trevor?" I pushed a stack of printed documents across the table, the divorce filing, the photos from Esmeralda, the copies of his diary entries. He stared at the evidence, his eyes darting between the documents and my face. The mask of charm had finally shattered, revealing the calculating, desperate man beneath. You went through my things?" he hissed, his voice laced with venom. "I had to, Trevor," I said, my voice rising with a controlled fury, "because you lied to me, you deceived me, you used me. You married me for my money, didn't you? You and Amanda, you're running a scam." He slammed his fist on the table. "You don't know what you're talking about. Amanda and I, we were separated. This is all a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding? With a child, Trevor. You have a daughter with Amanda. Did you forget that little detail when you were planning our fairy tale wedding?" That stopped him cold. He slumped back in his chair, all pretense gone. His eyes, usually so composed, were now filled with a flicker of fear. "Serafina, please, let's talk about this. We can fix this." "Fix this?" I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "There's nothing to fix, Trevor. You're a criminal, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. With Esmeralda's help, I presented my findings to the authorities. The evidence was irrefutable. Trevor Caldwell was arrested for bigamy, marriage fraud, and several other related charges. The news spread like wildfire through the city's elite circles, a scandal that rocked the foundations of their carefully curated lives. The public outcry was immense. Other women, emboldened by my story, came forward with their own accounts of Trevor's manipulative tactics. It turned out Amanda had been equally complicit, though she later claimed she had been coerced and threatened by Trevor. The legal battles were long and arduous, but justice, slowly but surely, began to prevail. Trevor was convicted on all counts. He received a lengthy prison sentence, his reputation in tatters, his carefully constructed life of lies irrevocably demolished. Amanda, cooperating with the authorities, received a lighter sentence, but her involvement in the scheme was also fully exposed. The aftermath was a period of intense healing. The betrayal had cut deep, leaving scars that would take time to mend. But I wasn't broken. I was stronger, more resilient. I had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. I immersed myself in my work, channeling my energy into designing structures that were honest, transparent, and built to last, a stark contrast to the deceptive life I had escaped. I became an advocate for victims of fraud, using my experience to help others avoid similar pitfalls. One day, several months after the trial, I received a letter. It was from Amanda. She was in a correctional facility, but her words were genuine, filled with remorse and a deep understanding of the pain she had caused. She spoke of her daughter, of wanting a better future for her, and of her determination to turn her life around. She even offered to provide further information about Trevor's broader network of co-conspirators, hinting at a much larger criminal organization. Her letter sparked a new resolve within me. This wasn't just about Trevor and Amanda. This was about exposing a systemic problem, about protecting others from the same fate. I met with law enforcement again, sharing Amanda's information, and together we began to unravel the threads of a far-reaching criminal enterprise. My name is Serafina, and I'm 29 years old. My husband refused all intimate contact after our wedding, claiming, "My body, my choice." Little did he know, that choice ultimately led to his downfall and to my own liberation. I had lost a husband, but I had gained my self-worth, my voice, and a purpose far greater than I could have ever imagined. The city lights outside my window no longer twinkled like shattered promises, but like guiding stars, illuminating a path towards a future that I would build on my own terms, with honesty, integrity, and unwavering strength. And that, I realized, was the truest fairy tale ending of all.